something dangling from the ceiling.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that was to block the reflection into the monitor.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah, that was an
You have
intentional.
excessive danglage in your...
It's no biggie anyway. Because
Yeah.
most likely
You're
not
not
close to
recording
the
it, but yeah.
video, but
Danglage. Is that like gig butt?
Danglage. I'm sorry, son. You're
Gig
suffering
butt.
from excessive dangling.
Danglage.
You know what? There's have you seen the dude wipes?
Yes.
Dude wipes, yeah.
I don't know if you ever remember. I don't know if I ever told you about this.
Do we really want to hear a dude wipe story?
I
This
have
is
a
how we're
bidet at
starting.
home.
Well,
so-
we were on the road with something, and I thought, wait a minute, wouldn't it be great to have a line of products that techs can use? I like call them tech wipes or something, where we can use to kind of refreshen ourselves, And all these years later, there's dude wipes.
No, there was something before that, and it's like monkey butt
Called
wipes.
a wet
They
paper
were-
towel.
No. But seriously,
no, but
when
even
I was
before
on the
monkey
road,
butt wipes, even before then.
there was something on the road
For
just for that.
exactly for that purpose.
But and I thought, man, wouldn't it be great to have something where we could refreshen ourselves in the middle of a load in or something.
Sort of a male douche.
Well, not quite a douche. It'd need to be more handy.
I don't know where this podcast is going to go.
I'm looking at a male douche right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Natty Cast, all things Cincinnati. And now to your hosts, Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas.
I am thrilled to welcome today's guest, Dave Lemmink. Now, while people may not know his name, you almost certainly have seen his work. Dave is a Cincinnati native who has helped revolutionize video production, specifically in the live music world, developing new systems and technologies to bring world tours to life for some of the most innovative performers the world has known. Think U2, Bon Jovi, Michael Jackson, Prince. The list reads like inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And in case you missed the largest touring acts from the last 30 years, you may have seen his work at the Superbowl halftime show, the Olympics in Atlanta, MTV Music Awards, or even the Grammys. All of that said, one of his best resume points is simply being a warm and fun person who is a pleasure to simply hang out with and chat. Now, here is our conversation with Dave. So help me fill in on that one, Dave. Like your guys' history, when's the last time you guys saw one another, or where are you in Cincinnati now, or what? Like, help me out on that one.
Yeah, I am in Cincinnati, back where I was born and grew up.
Dave's a West Sider originally.
I am a West Sider.
Okay.
Elder High School graduate. Went to the University of Cincinnati for electrical engineering. Worked at Kings Island. That's where I met these wonderful people.
I think you met Ronnie first, right? You guys were doing
Yeah, rock and roll explosion.
Rock and roll explosion. Yeah.
the Heart of Rock and Roll, I believe, was the opening of that show.
It was.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And did you have any work with Scott Monning?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, that whole group that was with King's Production, Paramount, Taft.
Yeah.
It actually goes all the way back to Taft.
Right.
Same group of people.
Yeah, they were all kind of still around because I think the following year or the year after, and you might have been gone. I think you might have been gone from K. I don't remember what years you were there. I don't remember how many years you did it. Did you just do it a couple summers?
3 years.
3 years. Maybe that third summer we were there because I think the following year you did the country show, right?
Yeah.
And then the year after that, which would have been maybe like 85, I think I mixed the country show at Showplace. And Ronnie moved on to games maintenance at the time.
That's right.
Right?
Well, that was a lot of fun.
Pockets full of skeet ball tickets.
Oh, dude.
Well, games maintenance fell under the entertainment because they had the full electronic shop and everything had gone. There was that big transition where, remember, video games were huge at that time.
Yeah,
Right.
and he had the key. I mean, we do when we were on the Late Show, the long days, and he'd have those keys. We would roll into that big arcade there. He could open up all the machines and we'd just sit and play. It was awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, that's when I broke the roller coaster that one year.
With the forklift?
Remember that with the forklift? Yeah.
Ronnie it was into
the racer.
It was into
Yeah,
the racer.
he backed into the racer.
Well, technically the parking brake failed, Well, it really did. I wasn't.
Of course.
I wasn't on it when it rolled in.
Just so we're clear, Ron, is this the story? Is this the
No,
story
this is
that
what
you,
actually
this
happened.
what actually
Yeah.
happened?
I
Okay.
wasn't actually on the forklift when it rolled back.
Gotcha.
I-
Did the parking brake fail, or did you hop off and then chase the forklift down into the side of the
Oh
racer?
no, the parking brake failed. I didn't see it. Well, remember it was the one that Dave
Bibbs.
used. Yeah, it was a real big one, and I wasn't particularly punctual to work that day, and
Were you punctual to work any day?
most days at the at games maintenance points, yeah, and it was one of those things where you get there, you get those nice new Clark Green forklifts, those really cool ones. And then if you didn't get those, the red ones were the next best. By the time I got there, the only thing left was that big yellow one. It had like the chain link fence wired to the top of it instead of the actual safety thing. Anyway, long story short, had the extra long forks, and I would drive to the back of the arcade, park the forks up on the ledge, and I could go in and wheel 2 games, not one. So I could slide 2 games on the forks. So after I put the first game on, I went back. I came out, and there was a guy going, "Hey, who's got the coaster out back?" And I'm thinking it was in his way. Oh, am I blocking the road? No, it rolled down into the coaster. So I go out the door, and there's a forklift down the hill. But the cool part was the game was still balanced on the forks. And we went down closer, and sure enough, the forklift was that big that it busted that main support beam. And they had to get the inspectors in.
I think the extent of my gaming ended with Atari, quite honestly.
Pong.
Yeah.
And Ron was very familiar with this. We did a tour called the Nintendo World Championships in 1990. This was actually pretty cool. It was the Nintendo game that came out back in the 90s, and it was a competition, and I think we did 29 cities with the finals in Los Angeles.
I mean, think about that. That's
We did
before
more than that,
esports and all that kind of stuff was going on, right?
Yeah. So you had a cartridge, and you played a combination of Super Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, and Tetris. I actually have one of those cartridges still.
You still have one?
Yeah, I do.
Do you know how much those are worth now?
Yeah, and I'm trying to find it. Yeah, actually, one of my first touring experiences was the 1990 Nintendo World Championships. Ron Thomas was on it. And like I said, it was 29 cities with the finals in Los Angeles. You played a cartridge that was a combination of Super Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, and Tetris. And we went from city to city. Typically we set up on Thursday.
Yeah.
The championships were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, loaded out Sunday. We took...
What were the turnouts for those then in 90? I mean, big turnouts?
Yeah, these were in convention centers. These were probably...
Oh, they're huge.
Yeah.
Oh, we did the Kingdom in Seattle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so
And
we
so
were set
what
up
people
on the
sign?
field.
How did it work? Because it was before people do it on the internet. How did people sign up for
Yeah.
this? I mean, how'd that work?
So I don't know how people found out about it, but essentially you bought tickets and you entered, and then you had the ability to compete. So what we had were these 300 competition pods, which were video games set up with these 13-inch monitors where you got to practice, and it would run through that sequence of, 2 minutes and 16 seconds of the three games. And what they would do is they would take the top scores from each round. They would go up on stage and they would compete against each other. And then by the end of the day, they took the top players, and then those 6 players would play against each other to become the city champion.
Wow.
Yeah, in 3 categories.
Yeah.
What is like 13 and under, 13 to 18, or 14 to 18, and then 18 and over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we saw people coming to multiple cities. I mean, people that we knew were, say, from the Carolinas on their own dime, say, flying out to Salt Lake City.
Wow.
To compete. So people were trying to determine, well, I got to be better than people in Utah.
And these are games that they owned locally, so they got good at playing Mario.
Yeah, I mean, these were the real games,
Right.
but the cartridge, what it did is it was a little timer. You had a little dip switch, 4 dip switches on the side, so you could change how long it lasted. But it would automatically sequence, so after you got to a certain point, let's see, you did Super Mario. Yeah, when you got to the end of Super Mario, it would automatically go. Yeah, after you get that, then you would go to Rad Racer, and you would complete the course maybe.
Exactly.
And then you would go into Tetris. And then the idea was just get as many points as Tetris as you could.
Yeah.
Right.
So the secret was to get through Super Mario as quickly as you can, and then not crash in Red Racer, and then everybody, where you made the points
Just rack up Tetris
was
points.
in Tetris.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that kid who, I think he won it all. Thor was his name.
Of
I won't say
course.
his last name. But there was a young man named Thor who won like the middle category.
But did like the winners of the cities ever compete against each other then later?
Yeah. Actually, Los Angeles, we had the World Championships.
Yeah.
All right.
So at Universal Studios, we set up one of the studios and actually broadcast it live.
Wow.
I'm not quite sure what network it was on, but it was, it was a live.
That was in 90.
That was 1990, yeah.
Wow. That's great.
And it culminated right before Christmas. But in addition to the competition, there was the something walk or other where just rows and rows and rows and rows of video games that hadn't been released to the public yet.
Yes.
So people get to see these games.
So if you bought a ticket to come to this, you could also then
You could play the new games.
And then after we crowned the champion Los Angeles, all those new games were then released right before Christmas.
Got you.
It was genius.
Good timing.
And it was huge.
Yeah.
What were 16, 18 tractor trailers on that tour?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Like-
crew of like 14 with like 16 or 18 tractor trailers full of gear.
That's
you
like
got to
a
figure.
big full concert.
Oh, yeah.
It was, and it was.
They were packed. And Stagecraft. John Grinder did all the stuff. John the Grinder, Procaccini, and Stagecraft built everything. And he's a big touring guy. That's what they built. So this was built like, a modern rock and roll show. So not an inch of space was wasted.
Yeah, it was the predecessors to Tate Towers FM Productions.
Well, I mean, how did you get from Nintendo? I mean, how do you make that leap? I mean,
So it's kind of interesting. I ended up on Nintendo because I was producing an international meeting for Kentucky Fried Chicken out in the Bay Area.
of course you were.
I love it.
The San Francisco production of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, so it was a shareholders meeting or something for Kentucky Fried Chicken International. I was a producer, and we rented equipment from this company that owned video projectors, who had an associated company that did concert touring video. Now, concert touring video was not a thing at the time. This company, Nocturne, created that. So I'll give you a little bit of background about Nocturne. Nocturne was originally Journey's lighting and trucking company. They're doing stadiums, sold out stadiums with Journey. And seeing somebody on stage when you're in the nosebleed seats of a stadium.
Yeah, you look like a little
You
ant.
look like a little
down
ant.
there. Yeah,
so
sure.
the thought was, hey, let's put these two screens up. And at that point in time, this projector technology was a piece of military hardware. It was called a Teleria projector. It looked like a piece of military technology. Put out about 100 lumens. I mean,
Nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say your desktop projector from Best Buy puts out more light than this. But we were doing concerts with these things, and we toured with this piece of military hardware. So Journey became the first band to actually have
iMag.
iMag,
Right.
what we know as iMag now. I think Nocturne's first paying client for video was Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this
The
company.
Central Park show, or was that?
No. This is years and years ago.
Okay.
So when did they start doing it? When was that?
So that would have been in the, I want to say early 80s.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
if you think about the time when Journey hit big,
Right.
81, 82,
Yeah.
83. I started working with Nocturne in 1988. And we had various shows that we were providing video and projectors for. And Nocturne always provided the camera systems. Well, it just turns out that, Nocturne's other clients were rock and roll places. So after I did this Kentucky Fried Chicken show, they're like, hey, we have this show going out. It's really weird. It's these video games. We got to figure out some way to get the video signal on these big projectors, which, by the way, it's not a standard video projector. It works on your home television, but it doesn't
Right.
necessarily work in broadcast gear. So
Right.
we had to design, or I had to design a system so that we could, put these 6
Take the
competitors
output of
up
this, yeah.
and switch it onto these 2 big screens so that
Right.
people in the audience can say, hey, there's Johnny and there's Billy, and look, Johnny's going ahead and he's winning.
Right.
Right? So design this for Nocturne, and then was invited to tour with
And to do it live.
with this.
I mean, right, you have to do this
So
live.
spent that,
Yeah.
and then so kind of set a precedent there. And then it was kind of funny because I met a woman while I was touring with the Nintendo World Championships that was an attorney out in Miami, and at the end of the tour, one of my friends, who was working for, I believe, Pepsi at the time, said, hey, we need I need to find an entertainment attorney. And I said, well, I met someone and she's an entertainment attorney. He's like, yeah, but we need one from Miami. I'm like, well, she practices in Miami. And next thing you know, she becomes Gloria Stefan's in-house counsel. And it just so happens that at that point in time, Gloria Stefan was planning one of the largest indoor tours at the time,
Right.
which was the Into the Light tour, which was her comeback from that horrible bus accident that she had.
Well, that's what I was talking about. You mentioned that with Bear. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember that. I mean, that was a
big story. Actually, we were on Nintendo in Pennsylvania when that happened.
I mean, some of her band members were killed, weren't
No,
they?
no one was killed.
Okay.
But yeah, she broke her back, and it was pretty
was
traumatic.
serious,
Yeah. So this was her comeback tour, and it was huge. And in fact, it was probably at that point in time the largest Latin tour ever, world tour.
Wow.
And it was intense because this stage was built so that part of the stage lifted up and actually went up over the audience. It was incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
and, we bid on the show. I was like, wow, this is perfect. I'll be able to see my girlfriend. Right? And actually ended up on the Gloria Stefan tour. And, I guess I can say the rest is history, but that started my relationship with Nocturne. I started designing systems. At that point in time, I think we had 2 or 3 fly packs. And a fly pack is essentially the equivalent of a television production truck, but it's in cases that you roll from venue to venue. They fit in a truck, they pack up real compact, but it gives you essentially everything that you would have inside of a normal television truck or a production studio in a portable environment. So my job was to design these things for all the various acts that were out there.
And I mean, I think it's important to note here, Tim. I mean, this is, this was the cutting edge of this stuff, right? It didn't exist. So
that's right.
Dave was grabbing technology. Okay, you can do this and you can do that, and maybe if we put it this way and do it. But it was the first time, and you were always on the front edge of that stuff of basically inventing the next version of concert touring. I mean, I don't think I'm overstating that.
In a way, I think you're right. And in fact, I think it was with U2 and their Zoo TV tour. And if I recall correctly, my mind gets fuzzy these days, but I can remember it was Thanksgiving, and I got a call from Willie Williams, who was U2's set designer. And I can't remember, but I believe Bono was on the line too. But they were discussing this concept for this world tour where video, instead of being these postage stamps, that you're looking at above this screen, was actually integrated as part of the stage.
Right, because when we talked about iMag before, I mean, the original iMag were just that, 2 little, and they were little by any modern day standards, but screens at the time, which were the largest you could do, and probably pretty dim on the left side of the stage, right, where
Correct.
They were shooting, and you would just be able to see a close up of the guitar player or the
Right.
lead singer.
So Willie had this concept. Hey, let's throw 100 television screens, and let's get 20 VHS players and just play content, right? During the show.
Stage?
On the stage.
All over the stage.
All over the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That eventually evolved into the Zoo TV concept, where the content was actually customized for the songs, and it was triggered by a system that I designed and built that ran off of Laserdisc players. We had 18 Laserdisc players that were the large, what are they, 12 or 18 inch?
The size of a vinyl record.
Absolutely, yeah. Laserdisc players that we had, essentially 37 hours worth of content. was played during the Zoo TV tour. We had, I think,
Did you have
6
some
cameras.
satellite feeds, 2 live
We had
satellite
2
feeds?
satellite feeds. When we were in Europe, we used to take a live feed from Kosovo. There was the military action that was going on there. And I literally would be talking via satellite phone to a reporter that we had in Kosovo. So setting up this contact with a relay through Belgium. There was a Belgian teleport that they would bounce. They had a 6-foot dish. They'd bounce at the Belgian teleport, and then we'd pick it up locally. We had a dish that we traveled with. But it was interesting because I'd be talking during the show to the reporter, and there were certain times he's going like, I can't turn the lights on today.
Oh, because of bombing and things like that.
Yes.
Like, oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But we would go live every day to Kosovo with a live satellite feed with a reporter in Kosovo. We also used to make a live call to the White House.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which was kind of fun.
Was it Clinton was that president then? Maybe it was have been 90s
Bush?
or was it?
No,
It would have been Bush. It would have been Bush. Yeah,
Bush.
91,
Bush
92.
won.
Bush won.
Yeah. But he used to call the White House every day. But yeah, that I think when you talk about technology, that was when video became not just these golden hubcaps that you put on your Volkswagen, but essentially became a core part of the show. Right. I mean, it really changed what concert touring video was.
And did you know that? So like when you graduated UC and then you're entering this, is this something that you're like discovering in real time, or was this something that you had the mindset that eventually you had those ideas, or did they kind of present themselves in real time?
I think like everything in life, none of this was planned. I think this was me reacting to needs. I'm a person that tries to please people, and if somebody has an idea, no matter how far-fetched, and especially working with some of these high-end performers, their ideas were pretty far-fetched, I would try to come up with a solution. So I wasn't there specifically trying to change the culture, but also remember at this point in time, this was the MTV video revolution.
Right.
That was back when MTV used to play these things called videos.
Video killed the radio star.
Absolutely. Right. But, and it was also, this was part of when concert touring really became an industry, because up until that point, lighting systems were using old military beam connectors, and trusses were built by these welders that knew how to put trusses together. And eventually this became an industry. And I'm really proud to be part of an industry where, I know the guys that were there when they started, the guys from Clare Brothers Audio, which is kind of the grandfather of concert touring video. Yep. Tate Towers, who now, when you go to a concert right now and you see any sort of automation or, stages transforming or lifts or toaster pop-ups or any of those effects, Tate Towers is the company that builds these. And
where are they based out of?
They're based out of Pennsylvania.
Okay. And
it turns out that Tate Towers originally started, building stages with this guy named Michael Tate, and eventually grew into this. Oh my God, I think they have over 40 offices.
If anybody's ever been to the Ka show, for example, in Las Vegas,
that is Tate.
Ka to me is and if you haven't seen it, they do some amazing Cirque du Soleil show.
Yeah.
But and I think it's probably going to close soon, but the entire stage, and again, just for people who appreciate the mechanical aspects of this, this whole stage all of a sudden just picks up, turns into a wall, spins around. The whole stage. It's the mechanical stuff is incredible that they do.
Revolutionary.
Yes, revolutionary.
Yeah. So in back to your original question, none of this was planned. This was the natural evolution of this industry, and like I said, I love it. Nocturne lighting. When I joined Nocturne sold its lighting division to this company called LSD, Light and Sound Design, which was eventually sold to PRG, Production Resource Group, or otherwise known as the Borg. They're the big guys that do all the major concerts, the Super Bowl, all the major lighting events and stuff. But it's this group of people that all started in this.
Well, and you were around for the original lighting transformation too, where you went from so static, back when we were in high school, Tim, and you hung the par can or hung the Leica or whatever and focused it, and then that was it, right? And if you wanted a color change, you turned on the one next to it that had a different color gel in it.
Which is interesting. Back to Cincinnati, 1988, we did the bicentennial with Downey Productions, and myself and Ron participated with it. I was technical director, and we brought in Verilights.
Yes.
Which, we talk about moving lights, or essentially the robotic lights that move around, change color. They were brand new at the time. And I think I brought 12 of them in, or 16.
I remember seeing them. I went down and saw them because it was...
Yeah, this was something that, the general public probably hadn't been exposed to.
They probably didn't have color changing on them, did they?
No, they did.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, they had the dichroic filters. It was the VL ones. But, this technology was brand new.
Yeah.
And once again, Gary Carnes, we had friends down in Dallas that were building this technology, So I feel very fortunate because I was around all of these people.
Didn't Genesis, weren't they the first ones who took
Genesis?
that?
Genesis actually is the one that started
Verilight.
And it turns out Verilight eventually sold to Philips and then sold to PRG and then,
So Genesis is the band?
The band.
Genesis the band.
Yeah.
Genesis the band.
So, much like Dave was talking about, transforming like video, like YouTube, kind of the first ones really doing that. I remember when the Verilight went out because they were either an owner in it originally or something. They started, and they were the only ones who could tour in the beginning
with Verilight.
And so if you went to see a Genesis show back in the late 80s, and the lights were moving.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was that, but and obviously it all sounds ridiculous now, much like a satellite truck and this, people could beam to you from Kosovo from their phone today. But back then you were literally doing video uplinks to satellites and downlinks and
Well, and that's that. So then my next question to you, Dave, is like now current state, the Sphere in Vegas, like where we are now, like what's your take on that? Like, do you?
Dave was involved with the Sphere.
So, in building with this technology, the company that I was with, Nocturne, and we had a very bright investor at Nocturne that got us into LED technology. And Nocturne actually created the first touring LED video frames. So up in the past, when you see what you call the jumbotrons, okay, touring with those things in the old days was a pain in the butt because these things were meant to be permanently installed. They weighed a ton.
It went into a stadium. Like first big stadiums would have them up for there, and that was But
these were things that were meant to be permanently installed. They weren't meant to be moved from day to day. In fact,
that's what I meant, permanently installed in the stadium. You could see a little bit of video playback.
So I can remember Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney ended up being the first tours to tour with actual jumbotrons.
You've got to tell the Michael Jackson story. You've got to tell that story.
But this is the technology that has grown. And to give you an idea, if you're not familiar with the technology that's in a jumbotron, there are little televisions, CRT tubes, red, green, and blue, that make up the pixels of a jumbotron.
I actually didn't know that. That's what made those work.
That's
just
what
little like CRT,
like little CRTs,
so like mini 3-gun projectors, but built into.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But now that's all been replaced with LEDs. But we were also, there at the forefront. And then, like I said, Nocturne built the first what we call touring frames, so the ones that connect together very easily. It got to the point where, like with Metallica, we had a wall that was 120 feet wide and about 30 feet tall. And probably, I think we actually had shirts made, but 1313. We actually assembled and had the wall working in 13 minutes and 13 seconds.
Wow. That's great.
To have this enormous wall set up.
Please tell the Michael Jackson story.
Okay. So I had the opportunity. I was currently touring with U2 Zoo TV, and we had a little bit of a break. But Michael Jackson was starting the Dangerous Tour. We're in Munich, Germany. This was a broadcast that was going out live. It was covered by Fox in the States. And I think the idea was that there were three or four live songs that were broadcast, to the world audience. Fox wasn't the only broadcaster there. I think there were another 20 other major world broadcasters there, and I was there to help get that broadcast happening there. We're at Munich Stadium. Munich Stadium, if you've ever been there, 80,000 people. It's immense. It's huge. You walk into this place, and Michael Jackson had his set up. Benny Collins, who was the production manager for Michael Jackson at the time. Benny Collins is this big guy that if you ever met Benny Collins, you knew who Benny Collins was, but he was Michael Jackson's production manager, and he told you what to do, right? So
I feel like I just met Benny Collins.
Yeah. So Benny Collins, and Benny is an icon in the industry, or was an icon in the industry. But I can remember we're getting ready to go to air. This is going live to millions of people.
Around the world.
Right?
Yeah.
And I get on the call, and I get this radio call from Benny. Lemmink, I need you in Michael Jackson's dressing room right now. Benny, the timing here is not exactly ideal. I mean, obviously there was something up. So I was like, okay, great. So ran across the stadium, headed to the dressing room, and get to the dressing room, and there's Benny, and sitting outside Michael's dressing room. And, the interesting thing about interacting, or at least my interaction with Michael Jackson, was that you don't actually talk to Michael. You talk to Michael's assistant, who's standing right next to Michael. Right?
Yeah.
So we get into the dressing room, and Michael's there, and Benny's like, yeah, this is Dave. He can answer your questions for you. And Michael's like, I was wondering if I could play the Nintendo on the Jumbotron. And he says this to his assistant, and of course his assistant is parroting this back to me, and I'm going like,
yeah.
You can tell Michael that, yes, you can play the Nintendo on your Jumbotrons, but we're about 7 minutes away from a live broadcast, so maybe I should head back.
You can do whatever you want, man, right?
Right. And actually, believe it or not, when we were done with that tour, that Jumbotron went to Neverland Ranch.
Oh, wow.
He actually had the Jumbotron set up outside of the window of one of the buildings there at Neverland Ranch.
Wow. Anyway, I just always remember that. I love that story. Can I play
Nintendo on the Jumbotron?
Dude,
yeah.
You can do that.
And you may have answered this earlier, but on that kind of note, your resume is so extensive. Like, is there a particular artist that you worked with that is one of your favorites, or an experience?
I have three favorite artists that I've worked with. The first one being Paul McCartney. So once again, I was exposed to Paul McCartney. Once again, I was on tour with U2 Zoo TV. We were in the process of trying to get the contract to do both projection, video, and camera systems for an upcoming Paul McCartney tour. I flew out to London, met with Paul, and essentially we did Paul McCartney from, I want to say 91, 92 until present day.
Wow.
I toured with Paul on a couple tours.
And he was pretty hands-on too, wasn't he?
Paul is an interesting guy. I mean, this is a Beatle, remember?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah. And, so you pinch yourself. You're like, okay, this is a Beatle.
Right.
But Paul is probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met. He's sincere. He comes out during, sound check and rehearsal, and the first thing he'll do his round. And you got to understand, the people that work for Paul McCartney are the cream of the crop. They're the best of the best, right? And he knows every one of those guys personally. He knows your name. He knows, he knows if you have kids. He knows, and he takes the time to get to know things, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a Beatle.
Right.
He doesn't
have to do
need
any
that,
of this.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So I have the utmost respect, and I love the experiences that I've had with Paul. He's an incredible performer. I mean, to this day, still does 2.5 hour shows.
Wow.
Yeah. It's probably been 10 years, but we went and saw him Monday night up in Toronto, up at the big concert in Toronto. And I mean, I was just blown away. And, I don't know, but he was in his 70s. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I mean, I think it went to 3 hours, to be honest with you.
Yep.
With encores, it was amazing, and I just you sit and you just kind of go, wow.
Yeah, and I'll also remember this is cream of the crop. One of the things that I pinch myself every day is that, I was working for the best of the best, and we were able to provide them with equipment that was the best of the best, that was cutting edge, that was bleeding edge, right?
You were inventing it.
Yeah,
we said it earlier.
Yeah.
You were inventing this stuff.
But once again, it's really interesting because, if I look at the entire catalog of people that I've worked for in the past, it turns out that the most professional ones and the ones that I have the most respect for are the old guys that understand what you had to do to make this come about.
Right.
We're in a YouTube bubble right now where everybody can be a star, and what ends up happening is that you get these performers. Not going to say a name, but there was an opening act on Bon Jovi, and it was one of these winners from one of these, how to whatever be a star
Reality shows.
Exactly, and this guy had an attitude. I mean, a real attitude. And it's interesting because backstage is a little different than most people imagine. It's not, it's not back there. Well, maybe it used to be in the past, but, it's not this place with a bunch of groupies hanging out and, a bunch of drugs and drinking and all that. I mean, it's a very professional environment. You have, you have engineers, you have technicians, you have stagehands, but it's totally different than most people imagine. But one of the things that is kind of universal is there's kind of a universal respect that the crews that are there are professional and they're providing a service. And even though, you're working with a Madonna or, U2, there's a common courtesy that there's a respect for, the art.
Yeah.
You're not the rock star, but you know what? You're there to make the guy look good, right?
Yeah.
So you would kind of expect that artist would have a mutual respect.
The artists who are smart understand what it's like to stand in the middle of a stadium and not have their microphone work.
What's the roadie song?
You're talking about Jackson Brown?
Jackson Brown.
Stay?
Yeah.
Stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jackson Brown's song really kind of hits home.
Nailed
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we think about on the road. I mean, to give you an idea, being on the road is interesting because you're doing 18-hour days, sometimes 6 days in a row. You're sleeping on a bus. You're taking showers in, depending on where it is. But no, most of the time you're taking it in the dressing rooms for the hockey team or the basketball team or whatever.
Right.
But there are times when you're doing a festival and it's freezing cold out in a portable shower.
Right.
You're not getting a whole lot of sleep. It's hard work. I mean, Rolling Stones, we had 52 semis worth of equipment.
Wow.
Oh.
That's a lot of physical work to physically load and unload.
Yeah.
And, it's draining. It's a
and then to flip the
fascinating
switch and to do a live performance, right? Because you're on both sides of that.
Right.
You're not just loading it and getting working. Then all of a sudden you're in performance mode.
Yes.
Right. I mean, and let's not underestimate that. Right. I mean, if you're just the Teamster or the IA guy loading it in, and you get to go back and drink coffee and watch a show, now you're performing. I mean, you're the part of the talent of making that happen, and you have to be on at performance level.
Absolutely.
And then when you come down, then you get to take it all down, load it in the trucks, and get on the bus and try to go to sleep, right?
But that was one of the reasons that I loved my job was that, every day there'd be 17,000 people reminding me why I did my job. I mean, it's a fascinating career because every day you're there to make people happy.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of jobs that you can say that, hey, what's your job? At the end of the day, my job is to make sure that people walk away happy.
Yeah.
Right?
You mentioned you said there were three. So
So Paul McCartney's right there on the top of my list. I toured with Bon Jovi for almost 10 years. John Bon Jovi's younger brother was the video director.
Oh, I didn't know.
So there was an instant connection between the video crew and Bon Jovi, not to mention that, when you're on tour with Bon Jovi, after 3 years, you get one of these little diamond-studded medallions, the Slippery When Wet logo that says that, hey, I have toured with Bon Jovi for 3 entire tours, right?
Right.
So I have that.
Awesome.
Wow.
So I have that. I don't wear it much. it kind of clashes.
It's like the World Series ring. You break it out for special occasions.
There you go.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
It's like Elvis with the lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's hanging on my. But nonetheless, I mean.
Hey, David, have you seen the Hulu?
Yes, I actually did, and it's kind of funny because I'm laughing
good.
because all the guys that I worked with for years and years and years are all on there. And
it's so good.
It's kind of interesting because John is that way.
Yeah.
If you watch the Hulu video, John is down to earth. Richie, I loved Richie to death. Richie was funny as shit. He had a sense of humor about him that it was pretty incredible. But also remember that and some of the things that came up in that Hulu documentary is that life on the road is tough.
It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times. I mean, we complain as roadies that it's really tough for us, and they're in the A group, they're going to the Four Seasons, but it's a really tough life, even for the performer.
100%. I mean, it's you're living it, and we always talk when we have people who travel about personal comfort zones. Whether that's on a cruise ship, like your own cabin or sharing a cabin, or where you get just some space to be on your own. But when you're on top of each other, living together, I mean, it's more intense than any marriage because you're living, working constantly with the other people.
Yeah, I mean, imagine working 18 hours and then taking a shower and then hopping on a bus with 12 guys. These tour buses, they're amazing. I mean, they're palaces now. When I started, they were converted Greyhounds. Now they are
American Eagles out there.
Yeah. Now they're literally these Prevost buses that have marble floors, and some of them have showers in them and stuff. They have expandos.
Still a bus.
It's still a bus. I sleep like a baby on those. But anyway, most of them sleep 12 crew.
Yeah.
So imagine you get done with your 18-hour day, you take a shower, and then you hop on a bus that's usually at about 45 degrees.
Yeah.
They're usually freezing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing because, when you get a bunch of hot, sweaty guys on a bus, last thing you want to do is be in a hot, sweaty bus.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to joke that, the long rides, we used to call them submarine rides because literally you are in a submarine going from city to city. And when you're on the road, essentially, once you're done loading out, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, you're on the bus, you go to bed. Next time you wake up, you're in another city in the parking lot, either making your way to catering or making your way out onto stage so that you can go ahead and lay out the rigging lines. But, it's pretty intense. And if those 12 people those 11 people that you're with on the bus aren't your best friends, and I mean that in a, I guess it's more of a challenge because, finding someone that you can be around and work, because also remember that, you're working with these guys. There's a lot of pressure in this because things have to work every day. You can't lose things. You can't break things. If you do break things, you have to fix it right there. So it's ready for the show.
You have to show up, right? You can't be, you have to show up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about like just not just physically be there, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and you're not even touching on the creativity aspect or the ego aspect that, with guys coming with ideas that,
absolutely,
whether or not they're heard and,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's a totally different story, but, back to our original story with Paul McCartney, Bon Jovi. Metallica is another one of my favorites. Did 3 tours with Metallica. Bunch of San Francisco guys, really nice guys. I got to say the tour was one of the most challenging tours, and the reason is when they tour in Europe, let me give you a little bit of background. So bigger shows, normally what ends up happening is you have what's called the steel or the main set. So that's the superstructure that holds everything up, right? And typically in a larger tour, there may be multiple sets of that. And then they do what's called leapfrogging. So you can do one city while your next city is setting up with a separate set of steel. So that way you can do shows every other day in these large tours.
Right. They're doing advanced.
They're doing the advanced. They're doing the steel, right? And then you have what's called, production, which is lighting, sound, and video. That all comes in day of show or the day before the show. Lately, it's more day of show. I mean, when you go and you see a production the size of the Rolling Stones, and you realize that,
They're rolling in that same day.
that
Wow, I didn't
7 o'clock in the morning, that all you had was bare steel.
Yeah.
And that by 4 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the evening, you're done sound check and the doors are getting ready to open. All that had to be set up, had to be teched, had to be tested, had to be worked. Not to mention we had to eat. We had to, we had to take care of ourselves. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have artists that actually appreciate that, Bon Jovi, like I said, really great group of guys. Got to know these guys pretty intimately because I actually designed the first touring HD system. So when high definition video came up, we were actually the first tour to do head to toe HD. Everything from the cameras to the playback to the screens, everything was HD. And, we had an artist that, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. We toured with beta equipment. Most people look at stuff and they're going like, wow, you look at this stuff that's out on tour. Realize that, some of the real high tech stuff is beta equipment. It is literally prototypes.
They built it. It's like, try this. See if that works. Right?
Literally.
Tell us what's wrong.
We built prototypes. And I'll tell you the reason they're prototypes is because Madonna doesn't want the same thing that Lady Gaga had. And Prince doesn't want the same thing that the Rolling Stones had. They want something new. And the only way you can get that to market is to be a rapid fabricator, to be able to move quickly, to be able to design quickly, to be able to, to build things. I'll give you a real good example, and I think I'm correct with this. On U2, if you remember, there was a tour where the entire length of the arena was a see-through screen.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay?
Yeah.
That particular screen was engineered, I want to say, within probably like a 12 to 14 week period.
Wow.
Because not only did it need to be designed, but then it had to be fabricated.
Yeah.
Right.
So, to give you another example, back to the sphere thing, and all this will roll back too. So when you think of the sphere, the outside of the sphere is covered with over 1 million of these little hockey pucks. Okay? If you think about it, each one of those hockey pucks has a power connection and a data connection. Okay? So there are at least 2 million connections in addition to the million pucks. So when you start thinking about
baking out there.
Yeah. When you think about scaling things like this, it's the same kind of stuff that, when I designed and when our engineers designed these kind of things, not only are you designing new technology, but you're designing new technology at scale.
Yeah.
Because this thing that you designed, the V9 series LED that was built by Nocturne, every tour had it. Which meant we had thousands of these tiles, and they were all built in-house.
Yeah. Well, remember, I got to see some of that stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Bon Jovi. Really good guys. Metallica, really good guys. Like I said, they understood what you were there for. Metallica was a particularly difficult tour because video is kind of the low man on the totem pole. Certain tours, you have groups that kind of rank, and video is all the way at the bottom of the totem pole with Metallica.
Who's at the top with Metallica?
But backline.
Got it.
Backline.
And Metallica's massive in Europe, right?
Absolutely.
They're like,
these are
like even mind blowing.
These
than,
are
I know in the States,
every concert is a stadium there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, so when you tour with Metallica in Europe, they leapfrog their systems, but they actually leapfrog production.
Oh, both the steel and the production.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So what ends up happening is that you show up in the morning with either the black or the blue gear. Okay, there's a black team and a blue team. Single crew, but the gear is leapfrogging because we're doing dates, back to back to back to back to back to back.
Right.
And the reason they call it the black and blue, I assume, is because you're black and blue when you're done with this tour.
Right.
Because, you have two sets of equipment, so you have two sets of everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 sets of problems.
And 2 sets of problems. And every other day you're exposed to that other thing.
Right.
So, when you start looking at the tech that's involved with some of these tours, this is massive. These are technological marvels, that come together that people just look at. You go to a tour and you just make this assumption. But I was the engineer that designed, that said, hey, when you're done with this tour, this piece of equipment fit in this little box this way, that packed into the truck this way, so that every day we could repeat it, so that number one, it would work every day. Number two, that we wouldn't lose it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment.
Well, and think about, you said 57 trucks or something, right?
Right.
But with what you need is on truck 37.
Right.
And you're dealing with stuff that's coming off truck 2.
Right.
It's got to come out in the right order.
Right. So that is, and that's really what I did as director of engineering, was design these systems that could perform that way.
But not just work, be put in, be taken down, be packed, right? All of that. I mean, it's the whole from soup to nuts. I mean, it's one thing hard enough to make something that can do what you're talking about doing, but then all of the rest of it on either side of it.
It's interesting. I have an interesting relationship with a lot of the major video manufacturers. Anyone that's familiar with it, Grass Valley, Ross, Fujinon, Panasonic, actually work with their engineers, because a lot of times what we're doing is we're taking beta equipment and putting it out on these major tours.
Right.
I have a close working relationship, because one of the things that we do is in these fly packs, typically your equipment is in these air-conditioned, environmentally controlled rooms where it's cool and it's not humid and it's perfect for the machinery. When we're out on the road, and a real good example was Taylor Swift, our fly pack was sitting in a tent. It was 105 degrees, baking, and we needed to do a show.
If anybody who's seen their iPhone just turn off, because it's in heat thermal protection, right?
Imagine taking an $80,000 camera, have it sit out in the sun all day.
Yeah.
And so these are the challenges that I had to address. And so the relationships that I had with manufacturers are such that, I had access to their engineers, and that, they would use me as a test bed, because if you want your equipment tested to the worst possible condition, send it out on a tour with Lemmink.
Right. He'll put it in its paces. He'll tell you everything that's wrong with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, because, you normally think of things, when you talk about, servers and high-tech equipment. I mean, these are millions of dollars worth of equipment. To give you an idea, the long lenses that we use, so these are the big broadcast lenses. You see them at sporting events and stuff. Those lenses retail for about $250,000.
Wow, just one of them.
Just one of them.
Yeah.
And most tours had 3 to 6 to 8 of these out, in addition to the $80,000 camera and the $200,000 switcher and the millions of dollars worth of LED screens. So, this was huge.
But in reality, that's the, we always used to say, from a technical perspective, if they don't notice you, then you did your job. If they just go, wow, right, or what an amazing show,
right,
not the video was cool or the lighting was great or it sounded awesome, because that just disappears into whatever's going on the stage, right?
It's the experience.
That's the real success. I think anybody who's worked backstage, I mean, that to me, that's you take away from that crowd cheering, and sure, that person on the stage is getting the adulation, but to your point, they know as well that, it took this team to make that possible.
Right. Do you get to New York much, David, and catch any Broadway?
Yes.
Because that's huge. The whole visual with the screens and Broadway that's just gone off the charts.
So it's kind of interesting. So in 2011, when Nocturne was purchased by PRG, we refer to them as the Borg. It's Production Resource Group. Production Resource Group actually provided, when I was there at PRG, 100% of the Broadway shows had their equipment provided by PRG.
Yeah, I mean, they used to. I mean,
PRG owned
the sound. There used to be 3 big sound houses. And
so
they
sound,
bought them, and
lighting, video,
exactly.
set. was all provided by
They gobbled
Production Resource Group out of Syracuse. Yeah.
which used to be 4 different companies that
Yes.
they gobbled up and consolidated. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
But I would say even I mean I feel like personally as an actor and seeing a lot of these shows now, I would say within the last probably 10 years, the use of screens, the use of visuals in the design of these shows is just off the charts.
Well, I think they even incorporate. I mean, into set. I mean, it's a big part of the whole set.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, LED technology has taken over not only the entertainment industry, but also the movie industry.
Well, the volumes, right? I mean,
volume sets and all that.
have you been on one, Tim? Have you ever been on a volume? You know, where they have, it's basically the room that's an LED screen and you're in it. You know, they shoot shows like The Mandalorian in them, and all of the scenic elements.
They're other than doing like mocap work, but that's
So the interesting thing about those studios is imagine a room that's surrounded on the floor, the ceiling, and the walls LED screen, but using things like Unreal Engine and various software technologies. The content actually tracks the camera. So as you move the camera, your perspective on the screen and the backgrounds and the way they render all moves based on where that camera is. So it's not like you're in a room where you're projecting the background. Okay?
Right.
There's actually depth to that is created by motion tracking where that camera is shooting and then having that rendering engine determine how things should look from the camera's perspective.
Wow.
It's really amazing technology, but once again, this is because of the LED technology that we use, you know, in concert touring, you know, every day.
And they've built these studios around now. I mean, they're a huge number of the things you see now are shot inside of those versus going to a location somewhere.
Sure.
It's incredible stuff.
And a little of a segue, but I'm also curious, where do you live in Cincinnati now? Like what neighborhood? And if I don't know if you're a sports fan, but if you had one jersey that you could rock, football, baseball, soccer, who would it be and why?
You know, it's interesting. So I grew up on the west side. I currently live in Coleraine Township. I was never a really big sports fan, except when I was growing up when we had the Big Red Machine. We were talking about this before the podcast, that every one of us can name every player on the roster for the Reds during those years.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I had to pick a jersey, it would be a Reds jersey. I'm not a particular baseball fan, but I can remember growing up, you know, we grew up the street. Pete Rose lived a neighborhood over.
Right. I mean, I was going to say, as a West Sider, it's got to be Pete. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I had friends that, you know, used to play baseball in his side yard.
My grandpa played semi-pro football with his dad.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Pete's dad.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
When I was growing up in Mount Adams, Johnny Bench lived up there.
Yeah.
So that was always cool. You know, we'd always see Johnny cruising around up in Mount Adams. That was always kind of the claim to fame up there. But yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as sports, I mean, you know, Big Red Machine is always got a place in my heart. I'm not a big sports fan, although my two sons are avid hockey players. You know, marrying a Canadian wife. Hockey became the sport, and they both played college hockey, and my oldest son is a goalie. My youngest son, they actually still play hockey in beer leagues and such.
Nice.
But
the FCC can't get you down to the TQL?
You're not a soccer fan, are you?
You know what? I played soccer in high school, in grade school, but have never been a soccer fan.
Move behind the scenes then.
I'm not a huge sports fan, and one of the reasons was, you know, because I traveled so extensively, it's really hard.
Yeah. Well, now it's easy, but back then it would be hard to know.
Yeah, I mean, because I traveled the world, so, you know, I could be on the other side of the planet.
Right. Have no idea what's going on.
And have no idea. Yeah.
I always like to ask people this question. It'd be interesting to ask you. So, do you remember your first concert that you went to, like as a person, like just as a kid or growing up, or anything that struck you or sticks in your mind, like as a audience member?
I want to say one of the first concerts I saw, and believe it or not, the way things work out, Journey.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
If I'm remembering this correctly, I was dating a gal that was working for Q102.
Right.
And we got tickets. I want to say it was Journey.
Down at what would have been the Coliseum at
What
the
would
time?
have been the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my first recollections
Right.
of...
the one that sticks out in your mind, like as going to see a big show somewhere,
and I never really thought that through, and it was like, well, Journey owned Nocturne, and I worked in, I worked in the hallowed halls of Journey.
I always think it's
for
destiny.
years.
Yeah, because I always say, Tim, what about you? Do you have your first concert?
Well, the first one, I remember going to concerts with my parents, like Moody Blues and the Kingston Trio, but that was just as a kid going with your parents kind of deal.
Yeah.
But for me personally, as a young man, it would have been the Prince Purple Rain tour.
That was mine too.
Because and the thing about it, and this segues kind of what Dave was talking about, the staging, it was the first time I had ever seen a stage. He had 3 circular like tubes, and then a tube would rise up, and everybody goes nuts because you see he had the jacket. You think it's Prince, and then it goes back down. And then another tube would come up, and everybody goes crazy. Nobody gets out of it. And then all 3 tubes came up simultaneously, and there's 3 Princes, and you're like, what's going on? And then he steps out of the middle one, and the place just lost its mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did 3 Prince tours.
Did you?
Yeah. And actually, I actually had a lot of conversations with Prince. And I'm not saying
That's
this in a bragging sense, but
No, I mean-
but it turned out that Prince is very particular about who he talks to and how he communicates. And one of my jobs as the video engineer was at the end of the show, I needed to collect the record tapes and personally bring them and hand them to Prince in the dressing room. Prince is one of these guys. I want to say there was I think it maybe was a Grammy performance or something that Prince had performed at, and I'm sitting in the video truck, and there's a knock on the door, which is kind of odd during a performance, and open the door, and you look out, and there's Prince
Himself.
and he wanted the playback tapes that he had provided that were, I don't know, maybe the background material or whatever. But, I learned very quickly that Prince controls all media.
Well, so I have a Prince story for you, not touring related. In Miami with some friends at a restaurant, and we're just eating dinner at a restaurant, and this was before cell phones, right? So we had actual cameras, and we thought we'd snap a couple pictures. Friends from a cruise ship, right? We were just getting together down there, snapping pictures, whatever, talking. Somebody comes over to our table and is like, "I need the film from your camera." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And it was Prince's bodyguard, who we had noticed was sitting at the table over there, and they thought we were taking pictures of him. And he came to confiscate our film, and we're like, "Look, dude, we didn't even know you were over there." But so I'm well aware of Prince's proclivity to maintain all of it, right?
So here's an interesting story about Prince. So Prince is very particular about that, about keeping ownership of that. And I can remember one of the things my company provided was the computers that Prince used, because after each show he would go online and he would look for posts of video and stuff and get takedown notices taken. He'd sue.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He was very particular, which if you try to look for Prince footage, it's few and far between. In fact, it got to the point I can remember we did 21 Days in LA and I was directing at that point. But Prince wanted a clip of Raspberry Beret to play out before the show, during the pre-show.
Pre-show, yeah.
And we didn't have it. And we couldn't get a hold of Paisley Park to get a copy of it. So downloaded from the internet. It doesn't exist on the internet.
You can't find it.
Wow.
So, and eventually I found it in some dark corner
of the
web.
Sure.
But he was very controlling that way.
Yeah.
But he was one that insisted that the record record tapes were handed to him personally every day. So I actually, had a bit of a professional relationship with Prince. We talked about things. There were times we got called into the dressing room. Of course, there's always that time.
Sure.
But tell you a quick story. I had a friend of mine that was the front of house sound engineer for Prince. And being a sound engineer for Prince is kind of like being a monitor mixer for Guns N' Roses. Friends don't let friends mix monitors for Guns N' Roses.
Wow.
Right.
You are the guy that Axl
it's
throws things at.
Everything at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, for the wider audience out there, mixing monitors in general is a thankless job. But mixing monitors for a volatile performer.
Yeah, explain what mixing monitors.
So mixing monitors. There's a front of house guy at a concert, and so they're mixing what you hear coming out of the big line arrays, the big PA speakers. They're mixing what everybody hears in the audience. There is a whole separate, and now it's all in the air and it's a totally different thing. But back in the day, there was a whole separate sound system, like a full-blown sound system on the stage that the monitors, and you would see them sitting in front of performers. But I mean, it rivaled from a audio output because a lot of these guys had deafened themselves over the years. And you had to mix monitors for basically for the performers on the stage. And, anybody who understands sound, a speaker and a microphone in close proximity to each other don't play well together, right? That's how you get feedback. And so the combination of this and perhaps some hearing loss and maybe some, chemically induced states while they're performing just make for a very volatile thing. And they believe whatever they're hearing is what the audience is hearing.
Yeah.
Right. And they want it to sound the way they think it should sound. So more of me, less of that guy. You get this massive drum kit behind you, just blowing your head out. And to be fair, as a performer on a stage, it's tough. I mean, the acoustical environment on the stage can be chaos. And again, all of that modern day has come much more under control. But you'd have, the guitar players with their Marshall stacks and so the sound environment, the acoustical environment on a stage is brutal. And the worst job is that guy sitting off either stage left or stage right, mixing monitors, and like literally where people are throwing things at them. So anyway, that's
So back to this story. Very wise man. I think he actually did front of house, I'd say for 4 or 5, maybe 6 years for Prince, which is a long time for Prince. Prince is one of these guys. By the way, Prince is probably one of the most talented musicians I've ever met.
Yeah, and a perfectionist.
Yeah. He is an absolute perfectionist, and he can play every instrument better than anyone, including...
He's a musical genius.
Yeah, including the guy that he hired to play the bass for him.
Right. Or maybe especially him.
So needless to say, he had a very strong opinion of how things worked. And of course, we recorded the show every night. So he could then listen to that. Anyway, he told me that, the reason that he survived so long were a couple things. And he said, look, when you talk to Prince, here's a couple things. I'm going to give you some advice. Number one, bring a notebook and a pen and write things down.
All right. Make sure he sees that you're engaged and interested and paying attention
write things
to
down.
That's right. And you can see in front of me, I have a notebook and pen, and that is from those sorts of lessons. Just at least show up and pretend like you're paying attention.
I mean, you don't necessarily have to write anything good there, but
do something.
Bring a pen and pencil. The second thing is repeat back what he said, but don't agree with anything he says.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's an interesting one.
So, Prince
doesn't want you to be a yes man.
So Prince, the trumpets sound awful during that song. You think that the trumpets sounded awful during that sound. Okay?
Right.
Now, what I've done there is I've established that I am not taking a side there. Because the next step that happens is that he calls the monitor mixer in or the front of house mixer in. So it's you and Prince and this front of house mixer. And Prince makes this statement. I didn't like the way the trumpets sounded during that song, right? Right, Dave?
That's what you said. Yes, I have it right here, that the trumpets.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I did 3 tours with Prince. I think I had a pretty good relationship with him. God bless him. Incredible artist, probably the best underrated guitar player of all time. The guy is a genius. But that being said, he's also weird.
Yeah, right. It doesn't come without. It doesn't come without cost.
He's definitely a conspiracy nut, and we had some pretty extended conversations about just some really weird things. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, as I run down, you're talking about the experiences you had, and I was looking for the list earlier. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But I mean, just off the top of my head, it was Stevie Nicks, it was Billy Joel, it was Elton John. You've mentioned U2. You've mentioned only Madonna in passing. You've mentioned Paul McCartney. I mean, Prince, Michael Jackson. I mean, the list of not just artists, not just famous artists, but truly iconic people. And, if you're around talented people, they don't come without the idiosyncrasies. But quite frankly, you're talking about people who are on the genius level spectrum for what it is they do. And I think you probably learned this as well. You have to give them the latitude to be who they are, or they wouldn't be who they are. They wouldn't be Madonna or Prince or Michael Jackson without that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And one of the things I look at is that, there's a saying that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
I've always kind of taken that to heart because,
because you're quite often the smartest person in the room. I mean, let's be fair, Dave. I mean, I know you won't say that about yourself, but I'll say that about you.
Right.
I mean, I've known you a long time, and you're one of just the genuinely smartest and interested in so many different things kind of person, which is, I think, probably what adds to that, right? You were just genuinely interested in all of it.
Yeah, I have a curiosity that could kill a bunch of cats. No, but that being said, and thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. But I've always kind of looked at this, and this is part of, like I was saying, I'm really grateful, and I wake up every day, and I'm going like, oh my God, I've experienced so much here. But being in that space where you're in a room with this talent, with this, with the intellect, with the creativity, is mind-blowing. And I'd almost say addictive.
Yes, right.
Part of the issues that I've had, throughout my life. And by the way, even though everything that I've done, and accomplished throughout my life has been great, there's hardships in life. There are things that you realize that, maybe you didn't pay particular attention to, or that you lost track of, or that, you regret. That being said, would I change anything? Yeah.
But you're talking about about life. But if you think about life, and you talked about it earlier, the life of both the performer, I mean, on the road side, but the performer as well, what people sacrifice to do that, to show up in your town this night and that town the next night. You give up a lot for that 3 hours with a stadium full of people. And the payoff is the 3 hours for the stadium full of people. Yeah. And the other, 21 hours of the day is all at expense of that, including your family, including your personal life, your relationships. I mean, all of those things pay a price in order for people physically to come to your town to entertain you.
Yeah, and you know what, we talked about this earlier, but it's almost like it's an addiction. It is a drug. That feeling that you get, I liken it. Let's go back to the Michael Jackson broadcast. So the opening part of that broadcast, Michael comes out of what's called a toaster pop. That's that little thing in the stage that essentially
it's a great documentary on it, or maybe it's in the show. I think it's in the Michael Jackson stage show where they talk about the toaster.
Yeah, the toaster pop. Yeah. So this is also a Tate Towers invention. Right. But what happened in Dangerous was that at the beginning of the show, Michael Jackson comes out through the toaster pop and then freezes in what felt like 3 minutes. And anybody that's been in production understands this. Right. 10 seconds is a long amount of time, okay?
Hey, 3 minutes is an eternity.
So, and this is, me being a production person, literally feeling like it felt like 3 minutes of him standing there. 80,000 people in Munich Stadium. The hair on the back of my head was standing straight up just because of the energy in that room.
Wow.
You can't replicate. It's
Right.
It's,
My hair's standing up. Just you telling that.
But you look at that in you know, you got to remember that was really early in my career.
right.
You want that feeling.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
This is, you know, I think I would be, if I wasn't you know, an engineer and a technologist and a, you know, a creative person like I am, I would be a drug addict.
That's right. Because it's
Because
addictive. Look,
it is
live
addictive.
is addictive, and you know it can even be in a small. I mean, Tim's an actor. I've had, and obviously, I mean that's the pinnacle of it with all those people. But I've had experiences in very intimate spaces live where you're with a group of people doing something, experiencing something together that is just. It's an overwhelmingly powerful drug. There's no other way to put it.
You toured with Rent for a long time.
I toured with a show called True.
True.
Yeah.
That's it.
Which is
Yeah.
a one-man show.
Right.
And I used to watch Robert Morris stand on a stage for 2 hours every night by yourself, right? A one-man show, and captivate a theater full of people. Which, you know, anybody, if you've ever seen an artist perform solo or an acoustic set or do that, and as great as all of that is with all the technology and all the people behind it, if you're one person standing on a stage and commanding people for 2 hours, there is something so powerful about it. But it's the same idea. It's taking this group of people some other place, and whether it's 80,000 people or 80 people in a very intimate space, it's the same effect. Like, you just want to be a part of it. I always called it joining the circus, but drug addict is probably the other way. But because once you feel like you've joined the circus, right, you end up, people are like, dude, why are you doing that? I mean, I got it when you're doing it when you're 25 or maybe when you're 30, but why are you doing that? And that's what it is. And I think that's also probably why those people are still out on the road today. I mean, in addition to the money, but I
think it's less to do with the money now.
Yeah.
Especially the older guys.
Yeah.
It is that feeling of performing, and as much as the performers were performing, you know, is like a video director, you know, that is my performance. You know, I'm really proud. There's a couple shows that I've done that I am just super proud of, that I felt I nailed.
Right.
You know, and nothing can replace that feeling that, you know,
Yeah.
I did that,
Yeah.
you know?
And nobody can take it away from you. I
Yeah.
mean, you can remember it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
feel like you'll be on the rocking chair one day, and like Tim said, you know, you can sit here and listen to you talk about it, and you can feel it.
But you know, it's kind of weird. So there was a tornado that went through Illinois at one point in time, and there was a benefit concert, and they had Styx and REO Speedwagon and Survivor and a couple other artists there, but all the artists that I grew up with, right? And directed the show and walked away from that saying, boy, I nailed that.
That's great.
And I felt really good because, you know, my engineer at the time made this comment of, you know, one of the things when you're directing live shows, especially if you've never seen the show, is to make sure that the camera is on the right person at the right time and anticipating, so that, you know, like, for example, there's a guitar solo coming up.
You want to get to the guitar solo.
You want to make sure that your camera is actually on the guy before you take the camera, right? And because I grew up with this music, I knew it. I knew where the drum hits were. I knew where the guitar
Right.
solos were. So it was one of these things where, you know, I was like, okay, 2 guitar, you know, 3 drums, you know, and then, you know, you're going through the, you know, the show, and you're saying, okay, ready 1, ready 2, ready 3, you know, and everything is in place, and the feeling you get walking away from that is like a drug.
Yeah, I think that's
Priceless.
right. Yeah. So if you were to name, well, no, I'm not going to do that. I was going to talk about, you know, like difficult or challenging.
Oh, we can name names.
Yeah.
No.
That's for the book.
Yeah, you got to save that one for the book.
You know, it's kind of funny because, you know, a webcam at home, I don't think I've done it with you, but essentially I have a server rack.
Oh, that's good.
So I have 5 floor-to-ceiling 45 RU racks
Right.
behind patio glass doors.
Oh, nice.
So my office is silent, but, you know, I got my monitors here, so you see the door
Yeah.
and all the servers. In
No,
the
that's
back.
a strong. But when you're having a technical call,
Right, and I'm on the
phone.
phone with with Google. I'm like, where'd you get that background? I'm like,
That's actually my
that's
background.
real.
Ding,
that
ding, ding.
is-
That's actually my background.
That is me.
I think the pandemic truly flip the script on that whole scenario situation with people's backgrounds, where people really that became something.
But they're all fake. I mean, every executive at Google I do, every once in a while I see their bedroom when it flips out.
It flips out, right? Exactly.
And I'm going like, okay, I'm in an actual office that I built because that's how I do business. I'm not sitting at the desk in front of my bed. It's not made.
No, you're exactly right. So at my home office at home, I bought during the pandemic, I'd looked for years, the big ships models, like for cruise ships.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a 5-foot model of the wrecks, of the ocean liner wrecks. It must have been in some travel agency in New York. And Matthew and I drove up to New York. It was in the heart of the pandemic, went to the Bronx somewhere, to this guy's garage. He was selling it and slid it in the back of our Yukon, drove around New York and drove back home in this thing. So that's behind me, and I have a shelf, with other stuff on it.
All right.
So that's my background. But the way I have it oriented, it's kind of, you can see a third of the room. So the other 3/4 of the room is a disaster area.
Oh yeah.
Complete.
We all do it. I mean, my workbench is here, and no one can see that.
So it's a total disaster area. But when you look at me, I got the shelf. I've got some nice trinkets up in the background. I got the big model of the wrecks behind me, which is always a nice story. My in addition to ships, whatever. My grandparents came over on the wrecks from Italy, so it's a.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Now, and of course they go, well, then that's why you're named Rex. And I go, yeah, sure, which is totally not the reason why I'm named Rex. But it works, for the story. Nobody
So why are you called
I don't know. My
Rex?
dad was working at Channel 5, the night shift, and there was some engineer down there named Rex, and they were shooting the shit at night. And my mom was pregnant with me, and he was like, Rex, that's an interesting name. Do you like that name? He goes, yeah, I've always really liked it. So apparently that's how I got named Rex.
Ron, how about you? How'd you get your name?
I'm the youngest of 10. I'm lucky that I even have a damn name.
No. Let's be clear here. First of all, Ron is not his name. His name is Ronnie. Ronnie on his birth certificate. Ronnie. No middle name, Thomas.
I've known the no middle
Thomas.
name.
No middle name, but his name is actually Ronnie Thomas.
Never
Yes.
knew that.
So when I found that out, you know how like on Roadrunner cartoons it was Wild and then
Wild E, yeah.
Coyote. We started writing his name in high school would be Ron, middle initial E Thomas. Ron E Thomas.
Ron, how do you feel about being called Ronnie?
That's my name. It's fine.
Okay.
But typically, very few people have ever called me that.
True. I have never heard that.
Well, the reason I
Reed.
know is because we were in homeroom together, right? ST. We were in homeroom together, and when they would call roll at the beginning of the year, they have whatever your name is on your card. So the teacher would be Ronnie Thomas. I was like, so I of course had to go check that out. Like, was it Ron E Thomas? It was like Ronnie, and I'm like, so is your name really Ronnie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but very few people have ever called me that. Francis Murdoch, 8th grade history teacher at Walnut Hills, called me Ron for the first time.
Oh, so you're always Ronnie before that.
So it was always Ronnie Thomas. It was
Which sounds
up
like a
until 8th
nickname,
grade.
right? It would be like Timmy or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right.
It sounds like a nickname, Ronnie.
Yeah, but up until 8th grade, Francis Murdoch called me Ron Thomas one day, and it stuck. Everybody from that class started calling me Ron, then everybody at Walnut Hills, and then
Ron
I
takes,
don't know how seriously you can take somebody if you got two guys in a room and they're named Ronnie and Timmy. Can you take those people seriously?
Unless you're in New York and Joey's there.
That's right. And he has your back.
there you go.
Joey's got your back.
Joey's got your back.
He's got a
They have
baseball.
shovels and bats.
Then it's serious. Otherwise, you're on a playground.
Exactly. You're either in the 3rd grade on a playground or something bad's about ready to go down.
Someone's got a shovel.
The NattyCast is proudly brought to you by Pago Lago Productions. This show is hosted by Tim Barker, Rex Stull, and Ron Thomas. Produced and edited by Matthew Lake and associate produced by Ethan Spanja. Special thanks to Sadie Kern at Pop Gun Flow for the graphics and to Brando Triantafilu for the original theme song. Feel free to follow us at _NattyCast on Instagram or head to our website, thenattycast.com. You can get this show wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.